Hello, everyone, and welcome to our American Institute of Certified Educational Planners, AICEP, webinar. My name is Cindy McDonald, and I have with me Lori Weingarten, and we are going to be presenting for you today information on becoming a certified educational planner. In particular, what you need to know about becoming a certified educational planner. And this is our agenda for the training. We're going to give you a little bit of information, welcome and overview. We're going to talk about the steps to certification, what those steps are and what that means. We're going to talk about the assessment and the part of the assessment that's institutional knowledge. We're also going to talk about assessment and the professional knowledge. You'll get information on scoring the assessment and also some tips and comments from recent test takers. So, Lori, are you ready to take this away?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So, as presenters, my name is Cindy McDonald. I am the president of a college counseling practice in Central California. I'm also the founder of another organization, HECA, and internet company Guided Path. I've worked with students here in Central California and remotely for over 25 years. I'm a professional member of many organizations and also am very proud to be a commissioner for AICEP. And Lori is the co-founder of One Stop College Counseling. She works with students in New Jersey and remotely throughout the U.S. and in Asia. She has 8 years of experience as an advisor. She too is a professional member of AICEP, HECA, and a member of several other professional organizations. She has a BSc from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania and an MBA from Harvard Business School. So we hope you feel like you're in good hands as we talk about becoming a CEP. Lori, anything else you want to add as a presenter?
No, I guess not yet. Just maybe that I think I got my CEP about 2 years ago now.
So, oh, perfect. Yeah. So what is becoming a CEP? Why is it important and why is it something you should consider? I teach for UCLA and in the online college counseling certificate program, and we're always encouraging our students to look toward the profession and set goals for the future and where they can go and what they can achieve. And this is what the Certified Educational Planner program is all about. And in fact, I encourage all my students to set that goal within even in the very beginning, because it creates expectations for ethical and qualified educational advising. This is a growing profession. If you haven't noticed in the last few years, the profession of working with students, either from a therapeutic perspective, working within schools, working as an independent, is really increasing. And so having and creating some guidelines and standards where we all can agree to and work together as from ethical and very qualified education advising is becoming more and more crucial. In that light, it also helps us to create and start our own national standards for both educational consultants and school-based college counselors. And I want to emphasize this. This is not just for one segment. It's not just for therapeutic or school-based counselors or independents. This is a program and a certification plan for everybody that works with students and families and parents. We also want to recognize value-oriented, knowledgeable counselors and consultants. You know, we do have a lot of knowledge and expertise that we share with the families that we serve in our communities or virtually now. And so this is a way to have that and receive that recognition. Also assures expanded knowledge and professional commitment. In order to make this a better, profession and work together within all parts of the community, with colleges, with schools, with programs. We all can come together and assure that expanded knowledge.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Someone said that they don't have any audio.
They have no audio?
Is that true for everyone?
So if you're not being able to hear me, you should put a comment in the question section.
So I just heard from someone else who said that they could hear it. So it must be something particular to one person's computer. So
and if you're not hearing, check your settings or call in. You can also do a call in through the system and look at the link or the registration. If you go back to the website, you can find the link for the call-in number. So, okay. All right. So, and if you have if the video or something goes in and out, please let us know, because then that way we know what you're looking at and what you're experiencing. So the other last reason for a certified educational planner program is we want to provide the public with a guide to use to select a qualified service provider. You know, as more and more people are and programs and systems are available, the public's going to need a way to sort through all of that and find those professionals who have that qualifications and have reached that level of certification. So the certified educational planner, there are several steps to becoming certified. And you know, as we go through, use your question and answer section on your screen to post questions, and we'll have time at the end where we'll go through your questions. So we'll be glad to do that. And each one of these steps and stages often generates some thoughts or questions that you might have. So what is the steps to certification? And they are really very straightforward and simple. And first of all, there's the application. And the application is very straightforward. There are different opportunities if you belong to another organization, HECA, IUCA, other professional organizations. You check with the office to see which applications you should do. If you're an IUCA professional member, you can do what we call the FAST application, because a lot of your information has already been obtained through your application to ICA, and so that can be used as part of your application for certification as a CEP. So the first step is application, and the application candidates, you submit information in areas such as your educational background, educational consulting, or your school-based counseling experience. What are your professional ethics? How are those demonstrated? What's your involvement in the profession? To be a CEP, you have to be involved. You have to be engaged. You have to be committed to professional development. And that's demonstrated through memberships, conferences, you know, speaking, doing sessions, training, things like that. So, you know, now is a good time. If you're setting this as a goal for your future, start keeping track. Just like we have our students keep lists of all their activities, we as professionals should be doing that as well. And you can find the application at the AICEP website, and anytime you have any questions, you can email us at info@aicep.org, and this email is listed here. But as I mentioned, if you're a member of a professional organization, you know, contact us to see if you qualify for a special application. Professional members of IACA qualify for a FAST app and a 50% discount on the application. And HECA members receive a 25% discount on the application. So the two steps to certification are complete your application. That's the first step. And then the second step is the assessment. So when you're doing the assessment, you're going to be looking at different types of information. And so there's both institutional knowledge and professional knowledge. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori, and she's going to share with you what institutional knowledge is all about.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. So the first step is the institutional knowledge. The way this works is after your application, or while you're doing your application, you identify 30 institutions that you feel comfortable that you would be able to write about. So it's completely up to you. You pick your 30 schools, colleges, therapeutic programs, whichever one you're testing for. It's typically 30 that you've seen in the last few years. Once you pick your 30, after your application is approved and you're ready to take the assessment, on the day of the assessment, you will get a list of 4 from your 30. Of those 4, you only need to write about 2 of them. So I just want to reiterate, you pick the 30, and then the AICEP organization picks 4, and then you only pick 2 of the 4. So you really have a lot of control over this process. Okay, with the 2 that you choose, you're going to answer the following 5 questions. And again, you know these questions in advance, so while you're preparing for the test and you're looking at these 30 institutions you identified, you will already know what you have to talk about. So the type of student who might be happy and best served at that school or college or therapeutic program. That's really thinking about fit and which students you would imagine would thrive at that institution. So that's how you open up. You have your institution, one of the 2 that you pick, and you just start writing about who would be best happy and who would you recommend apply to that school. The next part, the admission criteria, that's, from your experience, what type of student does admission seem to gravitate toward? Is it a school that values high test scores more than usual, or is it a school where the holistic factors really can make a large difference, like the strong extracurricular activities or good essays or fantastic interviews? Does applying ED provide a significant advantage at that school if they offer ED? Or do they offer EA? Or 2 rounds of EA? Or multiple ED and EA? So you're really going to talk about the admission for that particular institution. Even is demonstrated interest a factor or an important criteria or not? So you're summarizing the admission factors relevant to the school. The next part, the standout features or attributes of the school. Of course, that will depend on which institution you're talking about, but you might say the campus is beautiful, or there are a lot of multidisciplinary programs, or there's a strong student-faculty interaction. You might want to talk about unique academic strengths that this institution offers. You might go into politically, is it a liberal, conservative school, a moderate student body? Do they give merit awards? Do they meet all need? Traditions that might be very well known at this school. So you're really just talking about what makes this school a little bit unique and what the standout features are. The next part is you are asked to provide examples of similar schools. So that can be similar culture, comparable academics. If the school that you're talking about is on a quarter system, you might suggest some other schools or talk about other schools that are also on the quarter system. If it's more of a commuter school, you might talk about other schools that are similar, or maybe it's residential school. But you're listing schools that are similar. Perhaps the admission criteria is very comparable between the schools. And then the last part, a description of the physical plant and influence of the surrounding communities on the life of students. And I remember that this part worried me when I first saw it before I took the test, because I wasn't sure what exactly they meant by the physical plant, if I had to know how many buildings there were and what was it all Gothic architecture or was it modern? But that really wasn't what they're looking for. It's what you can describe about the way the institution is laid out. So is it a compact campus? Is it spread out where you're taking buses to class? Are there residential colleges on campus? How are the relations between the institution and the town that it's in? is there a college town? Are there a lot of shops and restaurants? So it's really a broad category, and it wouldn't be the same for each institution, but you just need to show that you're familiar, you visited, and you have an idea of what life would be like there in terms of the physical layout of the institution. So your goal with this part is really to demonstrate that you know the institution well, and that you could relay who would thrive at this school. So moving on, here's a sample response of the institution that they would be answering. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just in the very beginning, the person wrote that the type of student who might be happy at University X is one who is a B or B+ student who needs to have good time management skills. So they provided a straightforward description of the type of student who would be suited for this college. That's exactly what the examiners are looking for. It's important to remember that you're writing this for your peers. That's who's assessing your assessment. They are not looking for a FIS guide quality description of who would be happy here. And that's something that Steve Antonoff told me, that you're not writing for a guidebook. You just want to be straightforward and clear, and just get right to the point of who would be happy. There's another example on the next slide. I believe a student who has grown up in the Midwest, or at least has an appreciation for D1 sports and the emphasis placed on them, would be happy here. And then a little further down, the Greek life at University X seems to be a very big part of the institution. So again, this is another example where the CEP applicant demonstrates a strong understanding of the college and the campus culture and environment. The writer mentions the heavy Greek life and the sports pull that the school offers, and also alludes to the fact that a shy, timid kid might have trouble adjusting. So it's once again just showing that you understand the school and who would do well there. So those were examples of the institutional knowledge portion of the assessment. The second part of the assessment is the professional knowledge. That's a part where the applicant is given 2 short cases or vignettes covering self-reported fields of professional expertise. In other words, again, if you're doing college, you will have 2 case studies on college. If you're doing therapeutic, you will have it on therapeutic, and the same with boarding schools or day schools. And if you specialize with learning different students in colleges, you will also be probably given 2 cases where you can talk about the learning differences. So specifically, it says after reading each case, the applicant is asked to, and then these are the 3 parts of this section. So you will get 2 cases, and for each case, you will answer these 3 questions. You will, 1, assess the college or school characteristics that would be right for the student. So you can start by using the case facts supplied to provide a summary or an overall opinion or assessment of the student. What type of colleges would be a match for the student? How far do they want to travel to go to college? Do they want a big school or a small school or a city school or a rural school? Are they looking for Greek life or no Greek life? Is a competitive environment okay, or have they had enough of that and they want to be in a more collaborative environment? Some students will say things like, I don't want to take too many classes per semester, and there are some colleges where you are taking only 4 per semester versus 5 or 6 at other schools. Is it a school that's test optional? Do they have good financial packages? Are they need blind? Do they give a lot of merit aid? So these are all the things that you're going to talk about. Where would this student thrive? So you're reading the case study about the student, and then you're talking about, what type of college or school or therapeutic program would be perfect for this student. And again, this part of the test, which we'll talk about later when we talk about tips, but it's really what you probably do every day. You meet students, you get to know them, and then you assess them, you figure out what would be best for that student. And this is where you have a chance to really show how you do this day in and day out. The second part, provide and rationalize specific institutional recommendations. So here they're looking for 3 to 5 specific colleges or schools or therapeutic programs that are appropriate for the student. You would support your suggestions with specific rationale. So you would give a school that you think would fit based on the case you read, and then you would explain why. Is it because this school gives a lot of merit and merit money is a driving factor for the family? Or is the school a brand name and this family insists on having a brand name school? Whatever it is, but you want to back up why you're suggesting these 3 to 5 colleges or schools or therapeutic programs for this particular student. And then the last part is the case evaluations. You can include an assessment of counseling techniques, sensitivity to individual student needs, and ethics. So based on what you read in the case, this may be a very short answer, or you may have more to say on it, but this is where you have the opportunity to list any other points that should be considered when working with this student. You might want to provide suggestions for the student, like perhaps they need to be tested for a learning difference, or maybe they need to go back and research a different type of school because what they put in the case, what the student's looking for, or what the parents are looking for may not really be what you feel are good choices for them. So again, this last part might not be too long, kind of depends on what you read in the case. So if you look at the next slide, there's an example of this. So this is a sample case that you would get. And again, you're going to get 2 different cases in this professional knowledge section. So it says Carolyn Flores is a junior at an inner city high school with a very diverse student body. Later on, it says she's having a strong junior year with grades of A's and B's with an upward grade trend. She has a weighted GPA of a 3.3 on a 5.2 scale and an unweighted GPA of a 3.0, but an ACT of 20. And later on, it says that she feels like she may be dumb because her ACT score is low. And then it goes on to say that she works as a hostess during the week, and her face lights up when she talks about her interactions with the children in the community where the projects are located. So it's kind of as if somebody else got to know Carolyn, and then they wrote up a case study pretty much with what you would know if you were working with Carolyn. So they provided lots of information about her background, her desire to explore different majors, the fact that she's passionate about her volunteer work in the community. So based on those facts, which schools would you recommend? So that would be the case. And if you turn the page, you'll see, or the slide, sorry, you'll see that the first response, so the first recommendation that this CEP applicant wrote said, well, we're looking for a college for an underconfident, caring, community service-minded student. Qualifying for merit aid is a bonus, so Earlham College comes to mind. So they're recommending Earlham, and they're explaining why they're recommending Earlham. If you go to the next slide, where they're trying to recommend another school, you can see that they're recommending University of Redlands, and they say it's worth a look. It's reasonably diverse for a small school and works to create a happy community. So once again, you see that this person taking the assessment is suggesting schools and using supporting details to explain his or her suggestion. And then one more example and one more recommendation that this person taking the assessment wrote was Kalamazoo College. So you can see they recommended 3 different schools. They backed up their choices, explaining their reasoning for selecting these schools. And that's pretty much what's expected in this part of the assessment. You read the case and you come up with the 3 schools and back it up as to why you're suggesting those 3 schools. So I just went through the 2 different parts, the institutional knowledge and the professional knowledge, and I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy to discuss how to score the assessment.
Thank you, Lori. And I think that gives everyone a really good perspective on, the purpose and the approach of the assessment and how it really is just looking at information, things that you do on a daily basis. So once you've taken that assessment, then you turn it in and then it's scored. So we're going to talk about the scoring. So we want to really recognize that there's particular needs and concerns that we as adult learners have. In particular, some candidates, most of us, have not taken a test in many years. We haven't done an assessment like this in a long time. So there is a great recognition of that and understanding of that. There's also complete confidentiality. No reader is aware of the name of the person taking a test. I can vouch for that. As a reader, you just get a number. You do not have any idea what the name of the person that's of the assessment that you're scoring. So numbers and letters are used for identification. You don't even know where they're located. So it's very, very confidential, and and that adds to the nonpartisan part. The assessor is looking at your perspective, what you've written, and how you've approached it as a candidate to be a CEP. And then that light, the writing that you do should reflect a professional, should be from a professional perspective, whose sensitivity to student needs. As Lori says, it doesn't have to be a FISC guide type of thing, and it doesn't have to be all complete sentences. You can do bullet points, things like that. But just communicating your understanding of what the options are, and just also communicating an ethical, student-centered counseling practice. So, and I can, most of us, those of us that are in the profession, that's a vital and very important thing. And so that is something that you'll be able to shine on in the assessment. So the overall perspectives are more important than details or memorization. And, as Lori said, you don't have to know how many buildings are in a college, but just having those overall perspectives and understanding. And that's why this is something that you do as you gain knowledge and expertise. It's becoming a CEP is not something that you're typically able to do until you've gained a few years of experience. Typically, we recommend at least 5. But there are some people who may have had lots more experience in a shorter period of time. So again, if you have any questions, when in doubt, contact the office, and someone will be glad, one of the commissioners, someone from the office, Anne, will be glad to talk to you about that. So there are 2 sections. Section 1, readers are looking for candidates able to visualize or place a particular institution against the landscape of institutions. And you saw in those examples, how does Redlands or Kalamazoo or these other schools compare or fit in against other institutions. And section 2, it's the clear understanding, appropriate choices, and an excellent rationale for those choices is sought. Why would you recommend a student who's interested in a particular, STEM major? Why would you recommend one school over another? And being able to, communicate what your rationale is what you're looking for. So it's section 1 for looking at colleges themselves. Section 2 is how do you work with students, and that's been demonstrated in the examples that we shared. So that gives you the perspective and a framework for what the assessment includes. It has the institutional knowledge and professional knowledge. But we asked, we don't want you to just take our word for it. We asked several other CEPs why becoming a CEP was important to them. So let's hear what some of their answers were. And all of these are on the links in the AICEP website so that you can listen to the full interviews. These are short ones, and we're going to share these here.
Wanted a way to quantify my experience beyond my professional membership.
Oops.
And beyond my college counseling certificate.
I think the fact that now there's an organization that has established criteria to designate those who are most knowledgeable in the field is really helpful. It provides consumers with some security and some confidence that the person that they're hiring has the knowledge and the expertise to guide students through the process.
And take me to a different level of me trying to become who I wanted to become.
And secondly, I had tremendous respect for those colleagues who were already CEPs.
So those are 3 different consultants who explained why becoming a CEP was important to them. A lot of times people will have questions and they'll submit those questions and send them to the office. So we asked, how were those concerns handled by AICEP? So let's listen.
I shared some of them, but they were handled perfectly. And I was very fortunate. I think I had Steve Antonoff, who walked with me through this process. He was extremely kind and generous with his time. He was very patient. He explained the process.
And so Steve was great. He goes, you know what, let me check into it. And so then he was able to find someone in Austin who was a CEP and agreed to proctor my test. And that just sealed the deal.
But it was really something I had to deal with internally. Will I gear myself up and study for this test and take it, or do I just let this go? And I felt that the benefits of getting that CEP designation really outweighed the fact that I'm going to be frustrated that I have to study for a test.
All right. So now I'm going to go back here for a second because I realized we ended up skipping one of the videos. So let's listen to what were your concerns when you applied to be a CEP?
Considering the exam process, the application process, preparing for the exam seemed daunting to me. And finding the time was quite challenging. And then that little voice of self-doubt. I've been doing this forever, over 12 years. Would I be able to pass the exam?
So I had one concern, and that was the test. I didn't mind doing the application beforehand. I haven't taken a test since I finished graduate school. And I don't like taking tests. I'm not sure anybody likes taking tests, but I really thought that was decades behind me.
So, Lori, we can all appreciate and understand your feeling of not wanting to take a test. So let's hear what some tips are, and then we'll talk about those even in more particular. Here we go.
I would seek the counsel of the CEP board, seek out a mentor.
So I really focused on the first part of the institutional knowledge, where Steve had told me I need to give him 30 schools that I'm familiar with. You guys would pick 4, and then I would write on 2 of them, which automatically didn't sound so overwhelming to me.
If you can, 1, do it in your home area, that would be great. And 2, it's just obviously finding the time that is probably, as if any of us have a least busy time, but there are some times that are more of a lull. 3, I think it's just figuring out your game plan for studying, just like you used to, in any of your educational backgrounds things. I had, my cards that I had memorized. I had my forms that I had set up for all my college tours. it was just a matter of memorization and just really trying to like think about my cases that I had done working with my students.
All right. So working and having tips for preparing for the CEP exam. We also receive lots of tips from readers and participants in the CEP and what they did to prepare for the test. So I'm going to turn the time back over to Lori so she can share some thoughts with you on that aspect.
Okay, so when you look at this slide, you can see there are quite a few suggestions. I'm going to just talk about a couple of them and then give you how I studied for the test. You can see on the bottom left, it says my best studying was done through my work with families and students. That's what I felt for the professional assessment part. I barely had to study for that because, as I mentioned earlier, it's what we all do day in and day out. So, you know, you're given a case and you could just imagine it's somebody who walked into your office and that's the person you're meeting and what you would do for them. So for people who've been in this business for 5 or more years, you really have experience doing this. There isn't that much you have to study about. You just have to study for. You just have to take a step back, read the case and do what you always do. The upper right, it says maybe take those slightly less busy times of year to prepare for the test. That would have been great advice for me to take. I did not take that advice. I took this assessment, I think, right in the middle of the early action, early decision applications. So that was a little crazy of me. But I think I had decided I'm going to do this and I just wanted to do it. But yeah, I mean, if you're really busy at certain times of the year, you might want to just avoid taking this assessment at, putting additional stress on top of your other hard workload, and maybe take it at a time of the year where you're not so busy. And then the middle one, somebody suggested that they looked at the 2-page wintergreen data sheet, which really puts everything together it compresses it into 2 pages. I did not do that either, but I think that's a great idea. So the way that I prepared, and again, this is just a suggestion, everyone should prepare in the way they feel is best. But what I did is for the institutional knowledge, which is where I spent the bulk of my preparation, I made a spreadsheet with 30 schools on it, the 30 schools I had picked. And I actually made 3 spreadsheets because I took the same information and sorted it 3 different ways. So my spreadsheet 1 was the schools in alphabetical order. My spreadsheet 2 was the schools based on undergraduate class size, how many undergrads at the school from smallest to largest. And my spreadsheet number 3 was the same information sorted by ACT score, just because it's a little easier to deal with 1 to 36 versus 200 to 1600 on the SAT. So I had the schools, all 30 schools on 3 different sheets, either alphabetically, ACT order, or class size. And then with the columns, I put, again, how big the freshman class was, how big the undergraduate student body was, whether it was a public or a private school, what % of students are usually admitted, the ACT score, whether or not it was test optional, what the % graduation rates were, whether or not merits offered, what the cost of attendance was, the ethnicity breakdown. In my practice, that can be an issue. People want to know if it's, what % are different races. Just where I am in New Jersey, it's pretty diverse and not everybody, it's just an important factor for me to be aware of. So I put that all on a spreadsheet, and the AICEP has a copy now of my spreadsheet to distribute to anybody who's interested in seeing how I chose to study. But again, this is not a test of just memorization. It just helped me to have everything organized in that way so that I could review in terms of, from ACT scores, least selective, maybe to highly selective, and in terms of size, which schools are the small universities and which ones are the larger ones. So that helped me just to get things started, to be able to look at the 30 schools, in a nutshell on the different criteria. But the other part of institutional knowledge that I did is I looked at the Princeton best, I think at the time it was 380 colleges. I know they're about to come out with 384 colleges, so they've been increasing every year. But almost all my schools were listed in that book. So and each write-up is 2 pages, kind of like Wintergreen. So I read the summary in the Princeton Review Best Colleges book, and then I typed up some notes on each school, really the salient factors that I wanted to make sure I remembered. So there were really things that were important to me, if there was a special tradition at the school or, something unique that stood out from that school that I wanted to review right before taking the assessment. So that's pretty much how I studied, a combination of the 3 Excel spreadsheets I made plus the write-ups that I did on each of the schools. And just to give you an idea of time, and again, this is how I studied, but there are many ways to study for this test and prepare for this test. For the institutional knowledge, I made the spreadsheet in advance before I was getting ready to take the test. And then a few days before the test, I studied for a couple hours just reviewing the schools, trying to remember the important things that I felt the important factors and unique qualities of each school and some of the statistics. Again, this assessment is not about picking a school and saying this is the SAT score or the ACT score. It's just an overall understanding of the school. But for me, it helped me to do some memorization. So that's how I did it. And then the day before the assessment, so a couple days leading up to it, I spent a couple hours each day. And then the day before the assessment, I devoted one whole day to just reviewing the spreadsheets and reviewing my notes on each of the 30 schools. Okay, so looking at the next slide. Oh, I should have mentioned one more thing. With the professional assessment, that part, I think I did mention it earlier, but for that part, I really didn't study very much because it's like I've said earlier several times, it's what you do every day. So what I did for that, the only difference from what I do every day and the professional assessment part is the fact that I don't have a list of schools in front of me. So when I'm selecting colleges to recommend for my families, I usually can use the internet or guidebooks or whatever it is I like to use. On this test, you do not have a list in front of you. So I literally, I'm not exaggerating, I spent maybe 15 to 20 minutes just looking at a list of schools that I've recommended before and trying to keep them in mind. And I made sure that I had schools across the country. So just in case the case study said, this person only wants to be in the Midwest or the South or the West Coast or East Coast. But really 15 to 20 minutes just reminding myself of all the different various colleges and universities in the country. Okay. So then moving on for tips from others who have taken the test. This is kind of the cheerleading part where it's basically go become a CEP. So in the upper left, you see prepare and take the test, simple. So maybe that does simplify it a little bit, but truly if you do this all the time, you are probably very professional in your approach and you're probably very knowledgeable. You should be able to prepare in not too long a time and take the test and eventually become that, get those 3 initials after your name. In the middle of it, the case studies will feel familiar to you as they pose typical scenarios and ask you to replicate your process, how you determine best fit colleges. So that really kind of underscores what I've been saying. It's really what you do every day. To the right, on the second one down, I felt an incredible sense of pride accomplishing it and feel proud to call myself CEP certified. I completely relate to the person who wrote that. Having those 3 initials after my name and knowing that I've reached this level and can advertise that I have a CEP, I'm a certified educational planner, I think it lends an air of authority. So the very bottom one, just do it. I echo that sentiment, just do it. If you're watching this webinar, you're probably already at the point where you're leaning toward taking this assessment. And I guess, my goal really is to say this is not a major deal. If you know what you're doing and you've learned this field well, you should not have a problem taking this assessment, and it's really not as bad as you might anticipate. And if you turn to the next slide, you'll see that you get a very nice certificate. Mine is framed and prominently displayed in my office, announcing that you have reached this title of Certified Educational Planner. And when you are in your meetings talking to prospective families, you can mention that the CEP is the highest level of recognition that a counselor can attain. It really showcases your knowledge, your professionalism, and your accomplishments. And you can also mention that CEPs are recertified every 5 years, but don't worry, you don't have to take the assessment again. You just have to show that you have done what you always do, which are visiting colleges and doing some volunteer work or speaking, or there are a whole bunch of different ways to get recertified. But that way that families can be assured that as a CEP counselor, you are remaining current and knowledgeable about, about the field that you are doing, whether it's school or college or therapeutic. I think there's another video we're showing now.
Yeah. And I just want to go back and reiterate what you've said, Lori, and I'm looking at the list of people who are on this webinar, and I see many, many names of people who I know who are leaders and outstanding in our profession. So this is definitely something that many people are qualified and able to achieve, is going through and becoming a certified educational planner. And as we looked at all these different comments, you'll have access to this PowerPoint, and I would encourage you to look through all these different comments and tips that were sent into the AICEP office, that it is a very extremely satisfying experience. It helps us to be better and acknowledges the work we're already doing. So that's our goal and our mission for today's webinar, is to help you recognize, pat yourself on the back a little bit. Didn't you feel, Lori, when you were done, that you deserved a little bit of a pat on the back for being able to have accomplished this?
I felt great. I was actually surprised how strongly I felt after I received it. I think going through it, there's always that little worry. I want to do well. I want to show what I know. Then once I got the notification that I got my CEP, I remember actually I said to my husband, I can't believe how excited I am. I mean, I didn't realize I would be this excited to get the CEP. But I am proud of it. I think because it is the highest level you can attain. And I think so many people nowadays are just kind of hanging out a shingle after their own kids go to college, and all of a sudden they're experts. And I think that this does add that air of credibility. And yes, it's a great feeling. Everybody should do it. Everybody who's qualified and is working in the business should really try for this.
And I would add to that, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you have a really high intense practice or many of you know, I live, and I talk about this a lot, I live in Central California. So it's not a high intense area, but it's something that would still be very valuable and important to have and do. And so, wherever you are, wherever you're practicing, whatever students you're working with, whether they're just your local students or clerks thrown across the spans of the world, this is something that can be quite an accomplishment and an asset for you. So let's see what some other of our candidates said about the benefits. And we're starting off with Lori with yours too.
Okay.
So.
Certificate prominently displayed in my office. I have the initials after my name.
I think legitimized me because I didn't come from an education background, so there's that. Two, I think it has really been a benefit because whenever we do pitches to families, right, that is one of the things that I include. I'm one of 3 CEPs in the Austin area, and I think one of 10 in the state of Texas, which means that we've gone to an extra level, that other layer of really trying to become very professional in our line of work.
There are numerous benefits. I think there were surprise benefits, but I think that it actually gave me the confidence to enter into more of a global conversation with other colleagues, peers, about what's happening in higher ed.
So as you can tell, there are many benefits, and it helps us to be able to learn and grow and acknowledge, who we are and what we do. And there's a lot of celebration in that. So we would encourage you, if you're interested in hearing more, you can watch each one of the entire interviews with Lori Weingarten, Patricia Nemi, Deb Davis-Groves, Vita Cohen, and Andrea Koop. And there's a YouTube channel that has all of those interviews included. We also are going to be having a follow-up webinar. Now that we've introduced you to the concept of what it is to become a CEP and why that's important and what the steps are that you need to take to accomplish that, we're going to have a more in-depth webinar in July, so just under a month away, the CEP assessment designed to help you show what you know. And we've really emphasized that in today's webinar. And Dr. Stephen Antonoff, Rachel Sobel, and myself are going to go through and show you how the questions, we'll talk about the questions, give you more sample responses, actually give you an actual case study and so you can see comments from evaluators, so that you can feel comfortable with what is expected in the professional knowledge section. And you'll learn how the assessment is scheduled and other logistics. So we would encourage you to sign up for that if you haven't done so already. And this is also the links to register are on the AICEP website, so that you can register for those now. So we have a few minutes, and I know we've got, looks like we've had several questions come through, but if you have any other questions, now is the time. Use the question and answer section to submit your questions, and we have a few minutes to go through any thoughts or questions or comments that you may have. So Anne, do you have any questions you think we need to address?
There was a question about the cost, so you might go over the costs again of or I could just answer that.
Yes, would you please just answer that for everyone? Because I know everyone's, just talk about the process of applying. What do you need? Because they're going to come into you in the office. So what do you need them to do? So talk about that.
We just had one additional question asked. Do you take the test online, or is it actually a written test? And so it is a written test. It will be at a national conference, or it could be in a CEP's office in your area. But basically, there are 2 different applications. One is the regular CEP application, and the fee for that is $200. If you are a HECA member, you're entitled to a 25% discount, so that would be $150. You can pay by check, you can pay by credit card, and you can just contact me if you qualify for a discount, and I can send you a link if you want to pay by credit card. And as Cindy mentioned earlier in the webinar, IECA professional members are entitled to a 50% discount and a much shorter application, because the application that they went through with IECA to become a professional member with that organization covers a lot of the same questions or information that one would need to fill out in the CEP application. And so then when it comes time for the assessment fee is $200 for everyone.
And maybe I could just add, when I took the test, I'm a professional member of the IACA, so I did the FAST app, which is much shorter than the regular application because so much of it is covered in the regular IACA professional application, I guess. So it really was very quick, the application that I had to do. And then I wasn't able to take it at a conference. I wanted to take it right when I wanted to take it, and there wasn't a conference going on that I was attending. So Steve just arranged for somebody else, another CEP, to proctor it. So they were so accommodating. I mean, the application was fast, and then I heard quickly, and then I was able to take it, and another CEP who was nice enough to offer her home for me to take for her to proctor the test in. So it was very quick and easy.
So the logistics are that you would fill out the application and you either email it to me as an attachment, or you could send it in as a hard copy, and then I send it out to readers, and then I give them a couple of weeks and then ask them to get it back to me. And then once the reading process has been completed, I let the chairperson of the assessment committee, Dr. Steve Antonoff, know, and then he determines if a candidate is ready to move on to the assessment phase. And then again, the person schedules with Steve when to take the assessment, and that can take some time because everyone's schedules are busy. But then once the assessment is complete, then it goes out to readers. The assessment goes out to readers, and that process can take a couple of months to get the assessment results back. So it's not a quick process in a week.
Right. And I would also add to, I saw one of the questions about, well, what if you've turned in your application and then if maybe you need to retake the assessment, maybe you're not quite ready when you do it. And that's part of why there's a two-part process, because the committee will review your application, whichever type of application you submit, and determine, yes, we think this person is ready, to move to the second step, or maybe make some recommendations that maybe you need to do something in a certain area in order to be ready. So, it's never just one and done, and there are support through each step and stage of the process. And I know in the next webinar we'll address that even more detail, but just rest assured that, you're guided and supported and mentored, especially mentored. Many people have mentioned Dr. Steve Antonoff as someone who I know he talks to almost every single person who's applying or considering to become a CEP and what the process is, and just walks you through step by step and stage by stage, and is very, very reassuring. So, but it is a process, and and it's just like applying to college for our students. They are going through a self-reflection, self-journey, and this is a self-reflection, self-journey for us as professionals. And so, it really does help in many ways. Go ahead, Ann.
There was a request to receive a copy of Lori's study sheet, and so I will be sending out an email after the webinar once the recording is available with a link to the recording and a link to Lori's spreadsheet. So yes, everyone will get Lori's spreadsheet.
And you all know people. So when you get this email with the link to the recording and the spreadsheet, share it. Let people know and say, here, I got this link. You should take a look. Because the more we support each other and mentor each other, the better our profession is going to be, and the stronger we'll have the ethics and qualifications and becoming a CEP. So be sure to share. So Lori, any other thoughts or comments?
No, just do it. Just keep repeating, just do it. It's just a great thing to have. And everybody, I know that feeling of, because I also thought, should I do it? Should I not do it? I definitely thought about it a little while before I decided to take the test. But once you're on that path and you just started and it goes through, so maybe I simplified it a little bit. It wasn't instantaneous, but, it takes its time. But it's just a great feeling to have it. So I tell everyone, just do it. Just take the test.
I think, we're all guilty of not giving ourselves enough credit sometimes for what we know and what we can do. I know I'm just as guilty of that as anyone else. And so that's where hearing from people like you and Deb and, all of us that have looked at that makes a big difference, because then we realize you're not alone. I mean, we all suffer from those concerns, and having those concerns addressed is why we did this webinar. So Lori, thank you for sharing all your ideas.
Yeah.
Cindy,
Yes.
There's one more question. Can you take any notes with you to the exam?
No, no, you can't have anything with you. You just take your laptop if you're going to write in a Word document or something like that. But no, there's no internet. There are no notes at all. So that's probably the one part that worries people. But really, if you know what you're doing and you do this day in and day out, you are fine. But no, and again, the people reading it understand that you don't have notes with you also. So if you don't know every single fact about a school, you're okay.
And if the SAT score is off, that's no big deal, because they're not sitting there, as a reader, I know I'm not sitting there comparing, and you're not also saying, oh, well, they didn't mention this school or that school. That's not it at all. It's like, basically, if you build your case and build the rationale and support it, that's what you're looking for, right? So thank you, everyone, for being with us. Look for the email, and those of you that are joining us through just watching the webinar, we're glad to have you as well. And if you have any questions, I'm going to share my screen one last time here, and we're going to share the contact information for the AICEP office. It's info@aicep.org. And there's a contact page on the website. If you go to the website, you'll see a link that says contact. And I think one of the quotes that's on our website page really sums it up. So what's the CEP? It's for families seeking knowledgeable, ethical, and sound educational planning advice. The best resource is a certified educational planner. So go for it. We look forward to hearing from all of you. And as we talked about, many of us will mentor. So I know you're more than welcome to email me if you have specific questions. Lori,
yeah, me too.
Get our emails from the office, and we're glad to answer any questions. So thanks for letting us be your host today, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Lori and Ann, for being with us as well.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.